the other thing about it is that an influencer program often presents itself as a consumer marketing channel. And I think that that's something that tricks a lot of people when they first try to approach influencer marketing, because influencer marketing is actually a business development program. It's people doing business with people, and the outcome of that business is a piece of consumer facing content. But the actual process of making that happen, that's a business development thing. And so, like, a lot of B2C marketers get sort of thrown for a loop because they're like, well, wait a minute, this doesn't look like the marketing that I know. And a lot of B2B marketers just don't do it at all because they say, well, this is a consumer thing, but it's actually not.
Welcome to It's Marketing's Fault, the podcast where we discuss how to do marketing the right way. I'm your host, Eric Rutherford, and I am thrilled today because I have with me Mike Newton. He is a marketer who helps brands build and scale in-house influencer marketing programs. Mike, welcome to the show.
Eric, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it is my pleasure. And as I was looking at your LinkedIn profile and going through information, I thought, man, we're going to have a ball. We're just going to have a ball today. So really, to kind of start out, it's a little bit of a non-marketing question, but I found it fascinating because you studied in China for a year during your undergraduate days ish. So what's something you learned during your time in China that helps you with influencer marketing today?
Yeah, I studied in China for a year. I also then went back to China and worked for another almost 3 years, so close to 4 years total in China. And I'll tell you something that really struck me about just the idea of influence in general. There's this phenomenon in China, and I'm sure it happens in other places in the world, but it's really present and obvious in China, which is a lot of times what happens when new businesses open, like a bakery, for example, they will hire people to come and line up outside the establishment because there's something about the Chinese people that if they see a line, they assume that the product or whatever they're selling must be good. And so you will get people and you can overhear them talk, oh, this is some new place. What do they got there? Oh, they're selling some kind of cake. Should we go check out the cake? There's people waiting. And you can watch folks will just go and get in line and they have no idea why they're there, whether it's any good. They just assume there's a line. It must be good. And so just that simple demonstration of influence by itself is a really fascinating aspect of Chinese culture.
Wow. Like social proof at its finest.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So this is like, is this something you knew before you got there? Was it something like you just experienced like during when you were working there? How did you realize this?
Well, I saw people lining up at seemingly random places. And I would just sort of look at the place and I'd say, well, I don't understand why this is so popular. Sometimes I would go myself and check it out. And then just through like seeing it, observing it, and then talking to other people about it, I learned that this was a common thing that businesses would do in China.
Wow. Okay. I think that's brilliant. I do because because like the grand opening is like the hardest thing to do. The hardest thing to do, well, I guess everything's hard, but really getting it started is a monumental feat. So how do you see this sort of rolling over into what we can do here in the US or in Europe or wherever? Um, how are we not doing this?
Yeah,
I'd love to get your perspective.
sure. Well, I think you hit on 2 points. The first, you used a key phrase, which is social proof. And, this is a lot of what helps businesses function because we as humans do business with people that we know, like, and trust. And knowing, liking, and trusting, those are sort of 3 variables that combine together to sum up into this thing that we call social proof. And so demonstrating social proof, having social proof, this is a very important thing that businesses can rely on. And we're seeing much more in the tech world. You have this phenomenon called product-led growth. And a lot of that is about, well, let me just show you the product. And then underneath it, you see these websites that just have like endless scrolls of customer reviews or like blurbs from this or that person or what have you. And it's like, look, like I'm not going to try to sell you on this. You can try the product for yourself and then look and see how many people love this thing. And so that's something I'm seeing a lot more companies leaning into. The second thing that you hit on is this idea of the cold start. Okay, when you're starting from zero, you've got a product, you've got a place of business or what have you, but you need to now manufacture a business out of essentially nothing. And thinking about partnering with people to do that is a great way to do it, because if we put this specifically in the context of influencer marketing, you have a product, and let's assume it's a good product. It's a painkiller, not a Band-Aid. It solves a real problem for people out there in the world. So good product. That's best marketing, practice step number one, have a good product. So you've got a good product. And then there are people out there who need that product. Well, those people are sometimes influential. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're influencers in terms of content creators with audiences and stuff like that, but they have influence in their social circles. And so just reaching these people and finding ways to team up together, say, hey, I've got something you want, you've got something that I want, let's make it happen. That's the way we've been doing business since time immemorial. And I think that we just lose sight of that fact with all the flashy bells and whistles, the latest shiny object syndrome. It's TikTok today. It's, AI, it's this and that. But, people do business with people. And so find folks that you can work with to help solve problems.
All right, folks, a quick breather here. In my time building my business, I've come to a profound realization. Certain tools can be a game changer. That's why I'm excited to talk about Leadfeeder. It's a tool that helps you cut through the data and turn those website visitors into solid leads. Leadfeeder shows you which companies are checking out your site, tracking their behavior, and integrates all this with your CRM. Result? Your secret weapon for targeted lead engagement and making it easier for your team to convert website traffic into sales. Head to leadfeeder.com for a free demo and get a free extended premium trial when you let the rep know that you found about Leadfeeder through the It's Marketing's Fault podcast. All right, back to the show. I like that. I like how you described being of influence on those around you, as opposed to what we often think of as an influencer. You put the quotes around it, and you pick your big name as an influencer. But you're right. People have influence with those around them. Some have more, some have less, but they all have influence. So how would, just kind of building off that, and we talk about influencer marketing, how would you define an influencer program?
So an influencer program, I think, and I don't have a very well thought through definition, but this is what came to mind as I was thinking about this before we were chatting. An influencer program is the systematic process of identifying, reaching out to, and partnering with people who have influence or authority over a group of individuals. And I think that's like the most textbook way that I can explain it. And the other thing about it is that an influencer program often presents itself as a consumer marketing channel. And I think that that's something that tricks a lot of people when they first try to approach influencer marketing, because influencer marketing is actually a business development program. It's people doing business with people, and the outcome of that business is a piece of consumer-facing content. But the actual process of making that happen, that's a business development thing. And so, like, a lot of B2C marketers get sort of thrown for a loop because they're like, well, wait a minute, this doesn't look like the marketing that I know. And a lot of B2B marketers just don't do it at all because they say, well, this is a consumer thing, but it's actually not.
So really, it sounds like the process is almost like B2B and then B2C. It's like you, as the program and as a business trying to roll it out, you are going B2B with the intention then of it being B2C. So it's multi-layered then, it sounds
That's
like,
right.
in scope.
Yeah.
Wow. I had not thought of it in that context. Not at all. I was exactly like, both categories you described. I either thought it's a B2C process and it's not B2B at all.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Yeah, that's
something you
not
find out?
uncommon. Yes,
Okay.
I find that a lot. And actually, in 2024, B2B influencers as a category of content creators are among the fastest growing type of content creator out there in the space. This is happening with the rise of LinkedIn, and it's been happening for quite a while on places like YouTube and even Instagram and TikTok, with subject matter experts and specialists out there making content for professionals to learn how to improve their professional craft or solve problems with tools that they're working with. I happen to know a girl who's a product designer by trade, and she grew a whole profile for herself just talking about product design. And so it's just, this is part of one of the reasons why I wanted to come onto this podcast like yours, is to just help raise awareness of the fact that, like, the world out there is big and the amount of content being made is vast. And really it's just like a lack of awareness and a lack of imagination that stops people from realizing that influencer marketing can be a potent tool for them to use.
I really like that description, how a lack of awareness and a lack of imagination, because it really, the way you're describing it is like, this is really something any B2B business can get on board with if they think about it, if they get creative, and if they really work to engage with it. Am I hearing that correctly?
100%. 100%. The thing that I like to say is that your ability to work with influencers is only limited by your imagination.
Wow. Okay. That is definitely a paradigm shift for a lot of people, because I know a lot of times people think B2B, you think boring, you think like monochrome, you think,
Yeah.
like everything that's just like,
No fun allowed. Suits and ties only, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
it's true. It's true. And you think, oh, it has to be grammatically correct and all
Mm-hmm.
of this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
I mean,
So,
I've seen a
uh,
pharmaceutical influencer. He works in the pharmaceutical industry and he just loves pharmaceuticals. And so he goes on, I believe it was TikTok where I found him, and he talks about different drugs and, like, well, this is what this one does and this is what that one does and this and that and the next thing. And it's just like, people are just out there interested in all kinds of things. And it's not evenly distributed, right? That's not necessarily that everyone and everywhere is going to have content creators ready baked to work with, but it's a big world out there,
wow. Okay, you have sold me. Like, I never thought there would be a pharmaceutical
right?
like type of influencer. I
Mm-hmm.
that is that definitely has opened my perspective, because if you can have that, you can have insurance, you can have manufacturing, like
Mm-hmm.
you can do the whole gamut
Yeah.
of what it, of it really opens all possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll give you one other
Wow.
example, and this one
Yeah,
I think is probably
please.
much better known. There's a young woman on TikTok who is a lawyer by trade, and she reads deposition transcripts. So just like recordings of things people say in court. And she just like puts her own sort of sassy flair on it. She, like, puts sunglasses on or whatever. And so she's making court proceedings interesting and entertaining because some ridiculous stuff gets said in these courtrooms, and she just surfaces it for the purposes of entertainment. And now she's got, I think last I checked, she had at least hundreds of thousands of followers just talking about court depositions and making them funny.
If you can do that, uh, then literally the sky's the limit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my word, court depositions. Yeah, speaking of what is considered boring.
Yeah, right.
Oh my
Reading court
word.
transcripts, not my idea of a good time.
No, no, I worked for a while in regulatory and dealt with regulatory documents and other things like that, and they are just dry as can be. So,
Mm-hmm.
man, serious kudos to her. So let's kind of let's kind of go a step further into an influencer program, because you had a great definition. So it sounds like, though, there ideally is some scale with it, right? It's not that you're looking for a single person to work with or partner with. You're really looking ideally to partner with multiple people. So how do you think about scaling this
Sure.
program?
Yeah. So what you're correct in that what most folks think of when they think of influencer marketing, they're thinking of what I call the spokesperson model. And so this is something I did in China when I was working with Lenovo. They had Kobe Bryant as a spokesperson for their smartphone line. And so that's what most folks are going to think of when they think about influencers. Kim Kardashian, Pete Davidson, what have you. But in my experience, in my own programs that I've built at Discord and other places, we're really working with people who are influential in the narrow space that they operate in. And so I'm trying to reach and find as many of those people as possible. Now, in the gaming world, it's a vast ocean of possibility, because you have like different genres of gaming, and then within that, there's different sort of verticals within those genres and stuff. And so it's really about like, who are the people who are best positioned to speak to gamers that love playing this kind of game. And Discord being a voice and text communication app, we were interested in multiplayer games. And so like that was the lens that we used to view things through. And we built a very wide or broad program. And so I wound up working with, a couple dozen of the top Twitch streamers and well over 300 YouTubers worldwide in the course of about 18 months. That's when I started at the company, and then I handed it off to hired some people to help take it off my plate.
Wow, that's incredible. So it sounds like then you started at zero, and then
Close to, not
basically
precisely, but close to. Yeah.
enough that it felt like zero.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I inherited a handful of folks that Discord had been working with for a short time before me. And then, but my mandate coming into the company was figure out how to scale this.
Wow. And so how did you go about finding? Because I know it's like you talk about a process. It's, part of it is fit, part of it's finding, part of it's partnership.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find them? Because like you say, you're not going after the biggest names in the world. You're going after a niche subset of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to hear sort of your methodology or thoughts, anything on that.
The temptation for a lot of folks is to want to reach for some kind of tool. But especially when you're just getting started, I recommend that you resist that temptation. And instead, what you should do is open up whatever platform you're interested in focusing on, be it TikTok or Instagram, YouTube, heck, newsletters, podcasts. Just open up the apps that you have and start searching. And when you're searching, if you're not a customer of the product that you're selling, and people aren't always the customer of what they're selling. If you are, then just like act as a customer and search for things that you would search as somebody who's interested in this space or has this particular problem. If you're not a customer, then do your best to try to do the same thing. And like maybe go on Google and look at people also ask questions, and just like copy paste those questions into the search field and see what comes up. And your goal while you're doing this is to try to get as close as possible to what a regular human being looks at when they're consuming media on these platforms. And then start scrolling through stuff and just use your own human brain. And if something's interesting, click on it. And if you watch it and keep watching it, then when you're done, pause and reflect and ask yourself, what did I like about that? Who is this person? What are the characteristics about this person? And if you do this like an hour a day tops, maybe for a week or two, you'll have a pretty good idea of like, what does this content space look like? What are the different approaches to making content to reach this audience? Who are the people that I keep consistently popping up, or the people that I find myself drawn to as a consumer of the content? And that's a great way to just get started and get the lay of the land, and also keep a scratch pad, a spreadsheet, whatever open on the side, And anyone that you find whose content you enjoy, just copy paste their information into that document, so that when you're ready to start going yourself, you already have, you could have a couple dozen or more people that you've encountered just in your research process ready for you to reach out to.
I like that because that's not an expensive tool. That's not like 27 different steps that you have to go through. It's just what I say anybody can do. But yeah, I mean, it's just like you put yourself in that position, you do some searches, and then you try and engage with the material, because that's something that's I find challenging is sometimes people are trying to market in areas where they have no idea
Yeah.
of what customers are like, what the platform's like anything. So it sounds like that really gives you that baseline that you need.
100%. I mean, if you were going to try to run Facebook or Google ads, and if you just like go in and start clicking things and putting money into the slot machine and running it, I mean, that's a great way to light some money on fire and have nothing to show for it, you know?
I love that description right there, that you just put money in the slot machine. Because it's true, if you don't know the platform, if you don't know what's going on, that's all you're doing, right? It's putting money in and pulling the handle and
Yep.
hoping that
Hope your
something
bank
comes
account
up.
is big enough to fund your learning, because that's an expensive approach. Yeah.
It is. It also sounds like then too, you want to pick a platform. You can't be everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to find a platform that fits your customers, and that's where they live. Is that true? That's what I think
100%.
I'm hearing.
Yep. 100%. And you may not necessarily know what that platform is to start. It's okay to make just a reasonable assumption if you don't know, or if you have the ability to sort of spread out some experiments across a few different platforms. Because you may find, for example, that even though your customers hang out a lot on, say, Instagram, they're not necessarily in the psychological mode of wanting to be reached on Instagram with marketing messages. They may, in fact, turn to, say, YouTube, and they're like watching long form videos, and that's the place where they're much more open to being reached. But you won't know that until you do some of your research, see if any of your competitors are active on that platform. That can be a good signal. And then just you have to try and see what happens.
That's fascinating, because you're right. It's sometimes we are in places where we want to be entertained, where we are not thinking sort of with that problem solving mindset. We just sort of shove all of that to the side and ignore it.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good point, because sometimes we can say, okay, well, where my customers are here, but they're not there to buy.
Yep.
So that's
Yeah,
that's
and going back to
fascinating.
the sort of idea of like making the unsexy sexy or the mundane seem interesting, that's actually why you partner up with these creators in the first place, because their business is entertainment and education, and they're masters at that. That's their craft. And so you show up and you say, hey, I'm trying to reach the people that you're speaking to. I think I've got something that they would enjoy knowing about. Ideally, the creator themselves or the influencer themselves. I'll use those terms kind of interchangeably sometimes, influencer and creator. Um, Ideally, the person themselves is also in the market for your product. That was often the case at Discord, for example, that all of our influencer partners were users of Discord. You say, hey, like I've got this thing, I've got this idea, I want to work with you on it. But then like that's the part that you bring to the table. What they bring to the table is, of course, they have the audience, but they're also experts at taking this message and making it something interesting and exciting, or something that people are going to want to hear. Hopefully, not all influencers are created equal, but
And that's a good point. So I'm curious. Let's say you've started your list, you're beginning your process, you're building out and scaling. So you find people who fit the criteria in terms of audience, in terms of subject matter, and so forth. How much then does fit come in terms of like what like personality and what they're doing and sort of their style with you as a business in this field. I'd love to hear your
It's
thoughts.
hugely important, and it's probably the most important part of the job, I would say, overall, is once you've identified that you think you might like to work with someone. Me personally, I usually start with quantitative measures. So are they getting the types of views that I want to see, the type of engagement that I want to see? Are they located in a geographic market or speaking to a geographic market that I want to reach? That's all the quantitative stuff. And then qualitatively, I look at every single person's content after I've filtered them into my short list, because I want to know, like, are they brand safe, first of all? Have they said or done anything that's going to, gotten them into hot water and will get me into hot water by association? Um, but then also just like, do they speak in a way that matches my brand values? Using gaming as an example, you have some people who are just like really bombastic and loud and kind of aggressive, and that works for some people and it works for some brands, but it may not work for your brand. So absolutely, 100%. You have to lay eyes on their content, have to dig a little deeper. And ideally, in a perfect world, if we're talking paid brand sponsorships here, and we can get a little bit into more about the sort of different levels of working with influencers if we'd like, but if we're talking about putting money down to sponsor somebody, then you got to do the diligence.
No, and I appreciate that because I think that that is freeing so that if you find people who aren't a fit, and it could go either way, right? I mean, you could be a very staid brand, so you don't want edgy influencers. But the flip side is, well, if your brand is edgy and really trying to push the envelope in some ways, you don't want a quiet, boring person promoting your stuff because it just doesn't work.
Yeah. If you're Red Bull, you're not looking for the suit and tie unless that person in a suit and tie is jumping out of an airplane. You know what I mean? Like we just had the solar eclipse that passed over us last week, and in Austin here, we were in the center of the path, so I got to see the totality and all that. And I saw the next day on Twitter, Red Bull posted a tweet, a picture of two Red Bull airplanes flying almost tip to tip with the total eclipse in the center of it. And like that's Red Bull. And if you're not that, don't be that. Just you got to be you, and partner with the folks who help represent that to the audience you're trying to reach.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And that is very freeing, right? Because you have the opportunity to do what fits best for you. You mentioned some pricing and some structures like for anybody like businesses who are listening to this going, okay, I never thought about this before. Now, okay, this makes sense. How does pricing work? Like how's that structured?
Yeah,
What anything you want to share?
there's a 3-step approach to figuring out your pricing. It starts with strategy, and then it goes through to metrics, and then finally you arrive at your pricing. So first, you got to know, what are we even doing this for, right? What's the goal of us working with influencers in the first place? Then you convert that goal into measurable behaviors, right? Metrics are really just measurements of behaviors. So how are we going to quantify success for this? And then once you have that, now you can map prices to desired outcomes. So if you have viewership goals, we just want to raise brand awareness, we want to make a big splash. Well, that's stuff like CPM or cost per view, CPV. It could be like brand lift or recall or earned media value. These are very standard sort of like awareness style metrics. If you're deeper in the funnel, it could be content engagement. Are we getting traffic to this blog post? Are we getting downloads of our lead magnet? That's more mid-funnel type stuff. And then at the bottom, of course, you just have sales and conversions. So you can map very easily those metrics to, well, if we have targets for this metric and we want to pay this much to achieve this outcome, then what can we afford to pay based on our expectations? And I talk about all this in my playbook and in my influencer marketing toolkit stuff that's available on my website. I'll give the link to that, before the end of the episode. But it's a very systematic approach, a 1, 2, 3-step process, and you can know exactly what you can afford to pay and what you want to pay. So that's the other little nuance there. I have what's called the walk away point, can't pay more than this, and the aspiration point, would love to get the deal done at this point. And those are my guardrails. Because me personally, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a great sales guy. It's just like not what I love. It's not what I'm put on this planet to do, is to just crush it in sales. But I have to do sales if I'm doing influencers. And so these two numbers, that's my protection. Never spend more than I can afford. And that's how I keep myself safe.
That's a great perspective, a great process and strategy and I think what you brought up in terms of strategy is key, because if we don't know what we're going for, we have no clue if we've hit it, whether it's awareness, whether it's engagement, whether it's like a hot lead. Like, those are three very different things. Do you see, I think when I think of influencer marketing, I usually think of top of funnel, where it's more like brand awareness. Do you see more mid to bottom of funnel with more like content engagement and like, basically trying to close a sale, or is it more at the top?
I would say that most folks' impression of influencer marketing is that it's for top of funnel. I have spent most of my career at the bottom of the funnel. I build conversion programs. And mid-funnel is the place where I think there's the most opportunity for brands to grow and to be more creative. So I'll give you an example of this, again, from the gaming space. There was a game that came out called Battlefield 1, made by a studio called Activision, very well-known, famous studio. And Battlefield's a famous gaming franchise. Well, what they did, rather than just like make their own how-to type materials that go in the game, Activision approached all of these gaming creators on YouTube and said, hey, will you make a video about like how to do this part of the game or that part of the game? And they actually put those videos into the game. So when I, as a player, went in there and I was like, well, how do I use this weapon, or how does this map work, or whatever, I would see those videos. And so this is like product education, right? If we sort of abstract out of the gaming context, this is product education, which is a very mid-funnel thing to do. Well, it also doubled as a top-of-funnel awareness piece, because guess what all those YouTubers did? They were so excited to be included in a major title launch like this, they shouted it from the rooftops. And I'm sure that game got so much free press because those creators were just thrilled to be included in something that meant so much to them.
Wow. That's a brilliant idea of reaching out to those influencers in the space, bringing them into the fold. Like, that's brilliant. Because if, for everybody listening, if you're not aware, like the gaming community on YouTube, like there's videos and influencers for every game under the sun. Like my son, he's been playing Battlefield 1 lately, so I know exactly what that looks like. He's got some Minecraft influencers he follows and watches. He's got some guys who are on Call of Duty and these others. So like, and I've watched videos with him, and like they do, they'll video their games and their interactions and all of this stuff. So if you're listening and not aware of that, man, it's out there, and building these partnerships can, I want to say they give you credibility.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, this is something that if anybody has read Influence by Robert Cialdini, he talks about the halo effect. And this is exactly what you're always within arm's reach, right?
Always within arm's reach. I was writing about reciprocity just a little bit ago.
Yep, reciprocity is a big thing. Yeah, so
keep going. Sorry, I totally interrupted.
No, I love the excitement. It's a great book, and every marketer should have a copy of that on their shelves. So halo effect is a big one, right? And for those who may not be familiar, it's just like if there's someone who people has a positive opinion of, and then you become associated with that person, that positive opinion transfers to you. Reciprocity is another great one, because this is why, if you're in e-commerce, for example, or if you hear anyone talking about coupon codes or discounts or extended free trials or these types of things, this is a big part of activating with influencers, because the influencer can say, hey, I got this special benefit just for you. And then people will feel like, oh, this is, they did that for me. Well, I want to reciprocate. Or it could just be, hey, this is how I'm able to keep making this content for you. I work with brands, they pay me money, and I promote their products, only products that I believe in and I would use myself. And so if you decide to sign up, please do so through my link. That supports the channel and helps me keep doing this. And even that by itself is also reciprocity, because the viewer says, I've gotten so much out of just watching your content over the days, weeks, months, and years. I want to give back. So if I can help you, if I'm going to buy this thing anyways, and I can help you in doing it, I'm going to do so.
I think that's a great example. And that's something I think in the B2B world, especially, that mindset is often not there, of this idea of halo. I mean, I think it's there, but not to that degree.
Mm-hmm.
Where, especially with reciprocity, I think with halo sometimes, because you're always about, oh, give me a testimonial, give me this, we want, but even what you're talking about there within an influencer space, I think B2B often just misses it completely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're just not set up, as how it seems to me. They're not set up to, or maybe they haven't thought of ahead of time, ways that they can extend unique opportunities through their partner to that person's audience. And I'll give a simple example. Now, this is from the consumer world. Actually, no, I do have one from the B2B world. So recently, I've been trying out this new application, I'll call it, this new tool called Pod Engine. And it's a way to discover podcasts. In fact, that's how I discovered this podcast. And it's a very new tool, being built by a couple of guys who are early in the process. And I found it because a woman whom I trust and admire, Steph Smith, she surfaced it to me through her community of sort of online entrepreneurs and curious folks. And the internet and the Pod Engine guys extended a special pricing plan to anyone who signs up for the product through Steph's community. And so that right there is just an example of how, especially when you're starting out, Steph has an audience that's specifically interested in using these types of tools to do research and find opportunities for themselves. That's what this tool is designed to do. How can we make this a slam dunk for Steph and her community so that they're so excited to use this tool?
Oh, that's a brilliant example. It really is, because it fits. It is beneficial to both parties. It is beneficial to Pod Engine because they are extending that to Stephanie, and she in turn, it's beneficial because she gets benefit from that, and really, like, you and anybody else on the customer end of that, they get that benefit too.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody wins.
Everybody wins. And I think that's something I really want to bold, underline, highlight, gold star, pin that statement. The goal here is to have it so everybody wins. Your best partnerships are when both people are excited, there's natural synergy and alignment, and you're both like, man, this is so awesome. Like, what we're doing together is so much better than what we could do apart. And when you get to that stage, to me, that's when I enjoy doing business the most.
I love that. How is that something that you have to educate on, that you have to teach on? Do people just get it? Because I know that doesn't happen everywhere.
Mm-hmm. I would say it depends. A lot of times when I'm approaching influencers, I'm approaching to learn as much as I'm approaching to teach. Because sure, I have my business and my product and things that I'm trying to do, but these influencers also have their products and their needs and things that they're trying to do. And so when possible, and it's not always possible, but when I can, I try to speak with anyone I want to work with for at least a half an hour. And I spend most of that time just asking them questions about how their business works. How do you make your money? Is it mostly AdSense? Are you taking brand sponsorships? Who else have you worked with? Oh, could you show me some examples of that? How do you feel that went? What made it successful or what made it not so successful? And so I'm learning as much as I can so that I can better understand whether or how I can best position my offer to be a natural fit with them. A lot of times you have these conversations and it's just like, oh, actually we're not a fit for each other. And as you were saying earlier, there's nothing wrong with that. It's better to know that ahead of time than to start putting money behind it and then it doesn't go well or it gets difficult and then suddenly everybody feels bad. Avoid it. Avoid it just by saying no in the first place. Sorry, not a fit. Maybe later. And so that's
And
my
that's
attitude.
no, and I appreciate that because, and that's for both sides, right? If you're a business looking to partner, if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. And I can assure you, if you're an influencer and it's not a fit, like you don't have enough time in the day to partner with a business that it's not a fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's like you say, it's better to know that up front and to make sure everybody is in and understands the goal is for everybody to win and not save as much money or make as much money for me at the cost of whatever it is for you. I'm sure there are struggles, and I'm assuming that falls underfoot as well, just from a personality perspective.
Yeah, and there's also a learning curve. You know, you're gonna make some bad bets sometimes. You know, I've been duped, or like sometimes you just get duped, and that's just like people are being duplicitous, and you get through that and hopefully learn from it pretty quick. Sometimes you learn that like, well, you know, the approach wasn't right, but for whatever reason, like things just lost my train of thought. Can you wind back to what you just said before?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's this idea of people who are not in it for the win-win,
Hmm.
understanding that and realizing that, and that's as much a part of the fit process
Yes,
as content type
that's right.
and personality.
That's right.
Is that true?
Yep, that's true. And the direction that I wanted to go in was saying that you will come across people that it seems like on the surface it's a good fit. Maybe you have the interview and you have the conversation and everything sounds good, but it doesn't work out for whatever reason. And I want to emphasize that influencer marketing definitely follows the 80/20 rule. And in fact, it follows the 80/20 of 80/20 rule, which is to say that 4% of your inputs will be responsible for 96% of your outputs. And the goal is to get into a rhythm of consistently partnering and trying over and over and over again so that each time you get closer and closer to finding one of the 4%. And I really view my programs as an investment portfolio. And so there's naturally going to be people on the top, people in the middle, and people in the bottom. People in the bottom, you just, you keep your engagements limited, and we can talk a little bit more about deal structure, and if we want to get into that level of detail, we can do that. But you manage your risk by keeping your costs low and your deal times short, so that if it doesn't work out, you can say, hey, we tried, didn't pan out, maybe we'll revisit this later. And then for everyone else, you have sort of like the large middle, and they're just kind of going along, and like you'll get some profitability at them, but not a ton. And then you get the ones who just crush. But the only way you get to the crushers is by just churning through it. And that's what makes influencer marketing a laborious and operations intense process. And it's also, this is something I'm really trying to preach as well, that influencer marketing is an infinite game. You cannot win influencer marketing. You will never partner with everyone who's out there that you could partner with. You will never run out of possibilities to activate and do interesting or fun things. The goal is just to stay in the game. Don't lose so much that you can no longer play. And that's why your pricing controls and your strategy and your metrics are so important.
As you were describing that, I'm so glad you brought up the idea of a financial portfolio, because that was just sort of flashing through my mind as like you have to have diversification because you can't put all of it on one influencer, or you have to spread it out. And it sounds then like the more you learn, the more you for lack of a better term, you sort of weed out the
Mm-hmm.
people who aren't as effective,
Mm-hmm.
and you just keep trying to get more in that will hit that 4% of the process. But I'm also glad you mentioned that it's very laborious. Like there is like no shortcuts. It's just like almost like, for lack of, I mean, you're just doing research and contact, and
Yep.
it is just this giant
Yep.
ongoing sales journey.
Yeah. And this is why I think B2B people will find influencer marketing actually so familiar to them, because it probably resembles a lot of what their day-to-day looks like. But B2C folks aren't accustomed to just dialing for dollars, hitting the pavement, knocking on doors, trying to get in the DMs, getting rejected. That's just not the day-to-day of a B2C marketer.
True. But B2B it's a different game. It's
Different
a
ball game.
different, it totally is. And so I appreciate that distinction. And really, then it very much sounds like a perfect fit for B2B businesses.
Yeah, I strongly encourage anyone who's in B2B to take seriously the idea of exploring influencer marketing. I've heard all over the place that marketing costs are only going up. I mean, they've been going up. It's only getting worse. The same old channels are not doing what they used to, and people are looking for places to put value dollars. And I would encourage anyone in that situation to consider whether or not influencer marketing might work for them. And if you're not 100% sure even how to approach it, well, we've got this wonderful tool now called ChatGPT. Just sit down and tell the robot, hey, this is my business. This is who we're trying to reach and whom we're trying to serve. We're thinking about influencer marketing. What should our approach look like? What kind of partners might we partner up with? Can you give me some examples? Like, the AI has enough data where they could potentially pull out some examples of folks they could even recommend for you to go look at. And just schedule 30 minutes, 60 minutes, sit down with a Word doc or a Google doc and your old buddy ChatGPT and just see what comes out.
I love it. I love it. As we wrap up, any takeaways you want to leave the audience with?
Yeah. So I think I just want to underline a few things I said throughout the conversation, because I covered most of my really core points. The first is that truly influencer marketing the possibilities for influencer marketing are limited primarily by your imagination. That's thing number one. Now, you may not have a market. I spoke to a guy who is in the restaurant business, and he was asking me about influencers, and I said, well, are there influencers that SMB style restaurants are looking to? I don't know. You may not have a possibility of partnering there. So there's some market related caveats, but for the most part, you're limited by your imagination. That's thing number one. Thing number two is you got to know your strategy, your numbers, and your price. That's how you protect yourself. If you don't know those things, don't sign a single contract, don't send a single message. Take the time to figure out the fundamentals. And if you don't know how to do that, it's in my playbook, which we'll talk about in a second. And then thing number three is that, truthfully, influencer marketing is an infinite game. The goal is just to keep playing. So don't bet the farm on anything. And above all, have fun. It is a game. And you get to work with potentially some really cool, interesting, and exciting people. I mean, I met Kobe Bryant, for crying out loud. Never would have thought that would have been possible for me in a million years. And so have fun with it, because when you have fun, when your attitude is about fun, your partners will pick up on that and they want to have fun with you too. And then the audience that's consuming the content that you're making together will pick up on that and they'll have fun with it as well. So that's the final message, is that influencer marketing can be fun. So have fun with it.
I love it. I love it. And so if people are like, yes, Mike, I am ready, I want to know more about you, want to connect, where would you like them to go?
So 2 places to go. You can go to my website, which is buildinginfluence.org. And I have, again, my playbook and my influencer marketing toolkit, which is a spreadsheet that comes with a 5-day email marketing course. That's all free on the website. You can just go sign up and get access to it. And if you'd like to reach out to me personally, you can find me on LinkedIn or just send me an email, mike@buildinginfluence.org. I'd love to chat.
Awesome. So buildinginfluence.org. If you're listening, check it out. I'm going to drop those links in the show notes. Get informed, get some great information and some tools to really put your business in a place where it can grow. So, Mike, this has been awesome. I've learned a ton, and man, I'm excited to share this with the world. So, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. It was great to wax poetic about something that I spent a lot of time nerding out over. So I appreciate it.